life living and making a living can sometimes wear us out, grind us down, and dull our senses. So for a keen mind and a sharp contributive edge that can make it all easier and better and more productive, let's take some time to sharpen our axe. Stay with us right now for Life Talk.
Hello, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk with Bern Moses. Welcome to another in our series of ongoing verbal essays brought to you in this television format. It's really a pleasure to have you with us this week. Bern, we have had a series of people call in or write the show frustrated because they're starting things that they're not finishing. Projects, if it's cleaning out the garage or maybe piano lessons or that novel they always wanted to write or getting, the baby's room organized, different things, and they're frustrated because they're feeling like they're not staying on purpose, finishing the task that they've started. And I was wondering, it seems to me like as if you stick with something, incredible results can happen, but it's so hard to do it sometimes. And why is that? Why do we face such struggle with just the small things?
First thing that pops into my mind is that if I'm visiting with those people, or I got a chance to, I'd probably ask them what they felt about death and dying.
Well, that's a funny way to start.
Yeah. There seems to be some correlation between our relationship with death and dying and our capacity to complete things. Because to the subconscious mind, and in the past we've discussed how it's indolent and ignorant and can't see, hear, feel, smell, or taste. It's an accumulation of experiences so far, and its job is to look out and keep us alive at any cost, which means not making any changes. And so it perceives a completion as an ending, as far as this is concerned. And so there seems to be some correlation. Once people begin to embrace the idea of death and dying, knowing that people will and that they're going to, and they become more and more comfortable with that, there seems to be a propensity to more completions. Now, beyond that, it's something, oddly enough, that I don't recall ever hearing very much about in grade school or junior high, high school, secondary education, military training, and that is what I've finally identified as a law of accumulation. Somehow we just discount it. We think of momentum, getting off to a fast start, these kind of things, or being having enough drive to continue, that type of thing. But there's something else. There's something else that I think we have to kind of look at, watch for, and understand. Law of accumulation, and it works in all ways. For example, I know oftentimes, you're driving down a freeway, there's 3 or 4 lanes available, and somehow things begin to slow up, and pretty soon you're at a standstill. Well, there's a big wreck up ahead. So you wait there, patiently, and then pretty soon it starts moving again, and you move forward, and there's no sign of any major crisis. You wonder, what in the world happened? As often as not, Gina, it's someone way up ahead of you had an occasion where maybe a dog ran out on the highway, and they were going 65 miles an hour, so they slowed to what? Maybe 60. You know what I mean? Okay, so if they went from 65 to 60, the person behind them who was going 65 had to slow to probably around 55. Okay, that's just the way that works. Person behind them, and we're kind of going in leaps and bounds, it might be a 1 or 2 mile difference, but the person behind them, in order to not have a collision, has to slow to 50. Person down here has to slow to 45. Person down here has to slow to 40. And pretty soon, all the way down here, you're to a standstill. And there's no major crisis at all. It's just an accumulation. It's awesome. The other way, of course, is that a droplet of water, one after the other, can create a chasm. And we kind of we know that, we take it for granted, but we don't apply it in our daily lives oftentimes. As a consultant and coach and what have you, I have, for example, have had a lot of people in my life who are in this thing they call multi-level marketing or networking. And people sit around and they wonder, what is it that that guy's doing or that woman is able to accomplish that allows them to enjoy so many rewards, to earn all that money and have all that freedom, and it just doesn't seem to work. It doesn't seem to work. It's not that they're not working.
Right. It's never, I'm not working.
Yeah.
That's not working.
And a lot of it is understanding that they have skills that they have developed. They've got skills. Now, you may not be able to define what those skills are because they're so subtle, but they have skills. Well, what's a skill? Well, it's a tempered and tuned, tweaked, if you would, ability. Because somehow they developed an ability to do something, and then through continuing it, that became a skill. Well, where'd the ability come from? Within every one of us. Because every single person viewing this show has capacity. And unless a person is mentally diminished by brain damage or some other mishap, one person has just as much capacity to do anything anyone has ever done, providing it's within the law of nature, like cause and effect and equal and opposite reaction. But what happens is that we live somewhat in a linear world. In other words, if we were good, we got a piece of pie, and if we were bad, we didn't. And you know what I mean? Everything we've done had a consequence to it. And for the most part, we've had to accommodate the world and the people in it in order to get by. In other words, you get a job and the work flows to you and you do it. And so we're not as subject to the law, not challenged by it as much as someone who's really trying to accomplish something, whether it be a student or someone in a multi-level business or sales or trying to start a business, whatever it happens to be. And what we're saying is that when you do the right things happen. The pleasure and the power and the progress comes in the actual doing. You know, it seems fruitless sometimes as we do those things that people tell us to do. I know, for example, in multi-level marketing, people think they have to do wondrous things. Well, doggone it, what I try to do is to say, wait a minute, can you make one phone call a day? Just one phone call a day. Not 6 on Saturday. It doesn't, that doesn't capture the accumulation factor nearly as well. But one call a day, here's basically, if you make one call a day and just inquire and inform. You don't have to be a persuasive person. Just inquire whether the person has these benefits, knows about what you're talking about, inform them what's going on. But if you do that every single day, then call an upline, they call it. Now let's call a leader and see what they can tell you that might enhance your effort. Call someone who's following you and encourage them to watch you or to tune in with you. Go to a meeting once a week. You know what I mean? And if a person would do just those things, there isn't a single doubt in my mind that over a period of time they could become financially independent in that industry. But no one seems willing or understands the need to do those very simple things that accumulate. It's really quite astounding. It's like studying, for example. I have a son who there's no record of his ever missing a question on a test. You know, people say, well, he must be a genius. No, it's just that Rex kind of compartmentalized everything. I mean, he just, he read a little bit every day, and then he gave himself time to read it again and again, and he was never challenged because he was able to pre-compartmentalize and accumulate this awareness of what it is he was doing. There was no cramming. I mean, if you cram, you lose.
I get the impression here, Bern, that consistency is a large part of this law of accumulation, because you said fits and starts don't work, cramming at the end doesn't work. You have to do it every day. And I know for me, the law of accumulation happens real quickly if I don't sort the mail. You know, in a matter of 3 days, I can have a pile that's completely overwhelming. And then, of course, a bill gets stuck in there somewhere, and you don't find it until it's too late. And so I think all of us have felt the negative consequences of that law in our lives. I don't know how many of us have felt the positive consequences of that law in our lives. Maybe not nearly as often.
Not nearly as often as we might. That's right. And once you do, once you begin to be aware that this accumulation is on your side, if you're being, appropriately predisposed to do something, it's pretty exciting. And then to be able to convey that to somebody else in such a way to see them succeed that way. It's kind of like, and a lot of it is to embrace seeming failure. Now, if you're functioning in a process that's appropriate, I mean, I've reached a point in my life where I know that the consequence is going to be favorable. It has to be. There's no way that it cannot. Now, you may not be rich and famous, that's not the point, but you can accumulate, you can enjoy, you can appreciate, there will be rewards for the person who lets that law work for them. It's like eating an apple one day isn't going to make a difference in our life. But if you kind of buy into this idea that Grandma told you, that if you eat an apple a day, it'll keep the doctor away, well, after a year, you've eaten 365 apples, and if there's any nutrient in there, or trace mineral or what have you, and by the way, have you ever seen the mineral, vitamin content of a breakdown of an apple?
No, I haven't.
I mean, it's incredible. I tell you what, if I can find it at home, I will bring it and we'll share it with the audience. It's page after page of nutrients that are in an apple. So maybe Grandma was right.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing would apply to consistently exercising.
Exactly.
You know, 30 minutes a day as opposed to 3 hours on Saturday, which kills you, and then you're dead for
Yep, you don't do
the
it.
rest of the week. Right, you don't want to do it.
You start out with one push-up and then you do two, and I heard it called momentum one time, but actually it's accumulation. In other words, if you start out with one and you do one, if that's all you can do, but one day you're going to squeeze out two.
Yeah.
And then if you can do two and two and two, pretty soon you're going to get three. There is no way you cannot. The body does that.
Well, I found a couple of things that really, I think, keep us from being consistently progressing in a path that we want to take. One of those factors is discouragement, because as you mentioned, the results come, but they don't often come in any timely fashion. They don't often come, there's not any immediate reward or gratification. Sometimes it's very delayed, and it's discouraging. If we can't see the future, we don't have enough belief that the results will come for us, and we think, well, they'll only come for this other person because they have some magic formula that I don't have.
This is a human malady, there's no question. Years ago, I remember hearing a Earl Nightingale tape. I have to give him credit for this. You've heard of Earl Nightingale?
Yeah.
Great narrator. He said that the devil had an auction, and he had all these, like had a podium with hatred on it, and a display of jealousy, and all these characteristics. And you could come in there and you could bid on them and take them away, and he was fine. But there was one thing he did not have up for auction. You know what I mean? And there was a purple light shining on it, and it was a very precious thing to the devil. He wasn't going to let it go. And you begin to wonder, what could that possibly be? This discouragement. Yeah. And see, that's a semantical faux pas. In all probability, we don't have the right to be discouraged because there's a form of self-pity in that. Oh, poor me, it's not working for me. But it's exciting to be disappointed. See, it's okay to be disappointed. It's not okay to allow yourself discouragement. And I think a lot of this is semantics, but I'll tell you, it seems to make a difference. I know when I first heard that, it stuck in my mind, and I know it's gotten me through all kinds of challenges that I might have otherwise despaired with. But disappointment. Can you see where if a person is disappointed, he's still thinking? If you're disappointed, that might even stimulate some action in order to correct that or to overcome. But if you're discouraged, you tend to slow down, give up, a little whining gets in there. And so I think, once again, here we are back to semantics again, that if people become more aware of what there's, like this afternoon.
No, I need to clarify. You're saying, instead of saying I'm discouraged, to say I'm disappointed? So you're talking just about your verbal languaging to yourself?
Yep, makes a difference. Disappointed. In other words, you can imagine if someone is despaired, they're going to stop. Yeah. And discouragement does that. It's a form, and it is a form of self-pity. Oh, I'm so discouraged. But disappointed, that's almost a stimulus. Oh boy, maybe I can give this another shot, or how else can I do it, or I can work my way through. But again, it's semantics. Today, I was talking to a lady, and I don't know if I even want her to see the show or not. A precious person, no question. And she said that I need to be more bold. It's just never been possible for me to talk to people, to initiate ideas. And I said, do you just realize that you've made an affirmation? You've made it's kind of like, perhaps, maybe a couple of years ago, we made the analogy, or we asked the audience, do you know anyone who has trouble getting up in the morning? When I do that in seminar, with a group, there's always these head nodding up and down. And chances are they're the one.
Right.
There's trouble getting up in the morning. But I said, you know anyone who has trouble getting up in the morning? And they're, oh, yeah, you know. I said, well, you understand that's why. You know,
they look at you like, what?
Yeah, what? You know? And the reason they have trouble getting up in the morning is that they have affirmed that over and over and over again. If a person is 40 years old and he says, I have trouble getting up in the morning, how many times do you suppose they've said that? From the time they were 6.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And another thing, it gets confirmed by their family. Why don't you, he never gets up in the morning. Why don't you get up in the morning? You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. I have a young man in my life whose parents said over and over and over again, and I told him, I said, you're going to get a kid that will not mind, because what were they saying? You just don't mind. Why don't you mind? He never minds. And I bet he heard that, thousands of times. Mm-hmm. And so that was his instruction in life. So we have an irrational subconscious that picks up this idea, and that's what it makes it out to be.
Yeah.
And boy, we have to be careful of that. I think if there's something amiss in our society, it's not enough discussion, not enough reminding that we are trichotomous in nature, that we have an ignorant, indolent, subconscious mind that tries to dominate our life in order to keep us alive, and the darn thing can't even see.
We know.
I mean, that's so important.
Well, I've noticed at home, I'm much more aware of my children. If they say I can't, or they say something negative, I instantly say, yes, you can. Now say it a different way. Say it positively. But it occurred to me while you were talking, I'm probably not doing that with myself. It seems like it's often easier to catch it with other people instead of instead of being objective about yourself. So that's something to try to keep in mind.
Let me hasten to grab this moment too. I would urge our viewing and listening audience to discount this idea that there's no such word as can't. You know, a little kid, see, there's a lot of things I can't do. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things I cannot do yet. You know what I mean? In other words, it doesn't mean that I couldn't do them, but I can't do them yet. And I think we have to allow us. You take a little kid, he's trying to tie his shoelaces. In fact, I've got a book I wrote about this, a Linky book. I'll show it to you sometime. In fact, I'm going to bring it down sometime. Anyway, it's a Linky book, and it's a 3-chain link that's been anthropomorphized, and it's a kid's story. But this one, particular one, is about a kid trying to tie his shoelaces. And if you, and I know you've seen this happen among the little tykes, you know, they're trying to tie their shoelace. I've seen them cry, I've seen them sweat, I've seen them get mad, I've seen them despair, you know, and I've seen them go at it again and again. And then there's that moment when they tie the shoelace. It's like a light goes on inside. It's a beautiful thing to see. Well, if in that process, the little kid says, I just can't tie my shoelaces. And you say, yes, you can. You know what I mean? Can you imagine how frustrating that is? But if you can say, that's right, you can't yet. And they might say, well, what do you mean? And say, well, you've got a special gift for tying shoelaces. I mean, you really do. All you've got to do is open the gift, and that takes practice. That's called practicing, okay? For example, there's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, what are some things you can do? The story goes, and so, well, I can run, you know, and I can throw a ball, and I can, you know, all kinds of things like that, and that's for sure, but I remember when you couldn't. I mean, right now, I've got a little kid in my life having quite a bit of trouble eating. You know what I mean? It's all over the place, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the day will come when it'll be okay. But little kids before they're 6, they just keep going. They just keep trying over and over again, and it's the word try. And try has to be okay. I've actually seen people who took try out of the vocabulary. There's no such word as try, you know, and that's not fair.
It's not even accurate.
Yeah, because they say, try to pick up a pen. Well, they pick it up and say, well, you didn't try, you did it. And they think, well, that's what life is about. Well, I mean, that's pretty, you know, I've never gotten the point of that one. The thing of it is, it's okay to try if you have no experience in doing something.
Try to stop a train.
Yeah, exactly.
You can try.
One of the analogies I use about try is that if there is an experience that no one has been exposed to, then everybody has the right to try to do something. But once a reality occurs, then maybe the word try has kind of lost its impact. I don't know if we did this on the show or not, but if you've got a huge, say what, a 4 square foot box, and it's about 7 or 8 feet high, and I mean, that's a lot of volume, and you've got it covered with aluminum foil, and it's got these big metal straps around it, and and it's sitting in the middle of a room, and I invite you into the room, and I say, Gino, try to lift that box. Or if I'd say, Gino, lift that box, all you can do is say, well, I'll try. And you can brace yourself around that box and kind of hunker down, you know, and give it a good shot, and it comes up real easy. It's empty, okay? Then you can't try to do that again. Now, when something like that, if other people see you do that, they've lost the right to try too, because that's pretty obvious. When it comes to something like communicating in a certain way, or maybe trying to be persuasive when you never have been, exercising authority that you've never had before, trying is an appropriate term, because it allows you to be clumsy and inept, and we call that practicing.
Right, right. You know? Well, you could watch someone go off a ski jump and do a beautiful, perfect 360 and not get up there and do it yourself.
That's right.
You'd have to try and practice and try.
You know, that's something in that social experience that's like swimming. To me, selling is a social experience, of course, but you can read books on swimming, and you can watch swimmers swim, and you can get some great instruction on swimming, and you can do some dry land swimming. You know, get on a little block and get that movement just right. But the thing of it is, when you go in the water the first time, there's going to be some spluttering and spitting, and it's going to be difficult. And so there has to be a kinetic involvement in most social things for there to be a developed ability, kinetic involvement. You just got to kind of, it's kind of like fall forward and catch yourself, fall forward and catch yourself, and after a while, you're not falling forward. It's called a step.
Yeah, you got to participate.
Yeah. No question. This accumulation thing, though, I would really urge people. Now, the best way to accumulate is predeterminedly. In other words, if they're watching, most of us, by habit, live retrospectively. You know, we do what we do, and then stop and check and see how we've been doing, and oftentimes disappointed and say, oh, well, tomorrow. And we kind of do what we do and then stop and check, and oftentimes disappointed. If we predetermine every activity in short incremental periods of time and then practice doing it, the accumulation factor is awesome. Just awesome. Because when you do something predeterminedly, you do it consciously, which puts you in command. And you're conscious of your completions, and completions create energy and power. It's amazing. I have the darndest time trying to get salespeople, for example, to keep a record of their activity that otherwise might seem fruitless. It's kind of like if you're going to use the phone and you dial the phone, you know, or you find a phone number and you dial that phone number and you're waiting for the person to answer. If there's no answer, you know, I mean, just to discount that as a non-effort is inappropriate. You know, this should be
it's an effort.
It took time, took energy, and it took courage. You know what I mean? And therefore, we should be accountable about that to our subconscious mind. So this is, this is what this is about. We call this process. If you can find your peace and your power in process, everyone can be successful.
Well, from a quote, bean counter's perspective, it gives you a better idea of how much effort is involved to get a result.
Exactly.
If you think you should get a result for every 2 phone calls that you make, and that's just not statistically probable, at least if you're keeping track, you'll know that you're going to get a result for every 15 or 20 phone calls you make, or whatever it happens to be.
Usually there's a value that gets in there too. I mean, there's a point in there somewhere where if you really keep your statistics. So like everybody wants stability or security. Security is pretty important to everybody. But in the socioeconomic environment, security is stability, regardless of the circumstances. If you're unstable in your job, you won't have the job. If you're unstable in your process, you won't have, you know, your business. But security is stability is what? Statistics. See, if you know your statistics, you create a criteria. Criteria can always get better because you can weigh what it is that you're doing. And after a while, it takes on a value. I had an associate of mine some time ago that every time he dialed the phone, even though nobody was home, he had absolutely concluded that he made $2.75. Every time he dialed the phone. Really? Even if no one was there.
As the average for the number of phone calls.
That's right. It makes it easy to dial a phone when you know that even if there's a no answer, you've made $2.75.
Right. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And that's a much better way to look at it as, this might be a waste of my next half an hour, or my next 45 minutes, or my next 2 hours, because you don't see the results right now.
If you're in process, particularly if it's coached occasionally, not always, but occasionally looked upon by someone who's expert, there is no way in the world that you can't progress and succeed. And most people don't understand that. And they really don't, because most of their life has been flowing to them, they've just been keeping up. You know. Yeah. By the way, since we're talking about this little accumulation here, some exciting things are beginning to come together. Got a website. You know, every time you turn around, there's someone promoting their website, and it's kind of hard to sometimes remember them. But the one that I'm on, I'd like to have people check in on, is Sacramento City. Sacramento City.com/Burn Moses. That's pretty easy to remember, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you see something on there you want to inquire about, you can email me to burnmoses@Sacramento City. Can't beat that, you know. I believe it's .com. Yeah. And if you've heard this show and you think, what are they talking about? Or, gee, I want to hear more, you know, they can call 916. Got a phone, too, as well as a website and an email. 916-366-8749. And if they're out of town, 8749. And if they're out of town outside this area, you can be our guest and call 800-661-3490. And the reason we're putting that out there, just recently we've had a number of people, as a matter of fact, we had somebody not too long ago call in and say we've been watching the show, I'd seen it several times, and I said, well, gee, I really appreciate that. Tell you what I'm going to do. If you're open to it, I'll send you a couple tickets to a live performance. And they were delighted. It was a couple that came, and they saw Life Formula. This was on a Saturday. On Monday, they called with tears in their voice. You know, the tear of joy. Mm-hmm. They said they had the best weekend they've had since they were married. No,
Isn't that really wonderful?
Yeah, that's exciting to hear
wow.
that stuff, because they were communicating on a different plane, had a different tool, and that's what that's about. And none of their belief system had been offended or put upon, and so it was a great day.
Well, I always like the analogy. If you're going to dig a hole, you can use a spoon or a shovel
mm-hmm.
or a backhoe.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so many of us in our lives, we're trying to dig holes or build buildings or whatever, and we're using a spoon instead of a backhoe. And just being able to get access to the information, it can make a difference in how you think and how you see the world. It gives you power.
They can be immediate breakthroughs.
Wonderful. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Gina, thank you. Once again, my name is Burn
Moses.
Thank you, Gina Fitt.
Thank you, Burn.
Bye-bye. That's all right.